What if the most dangerous thing in a frontier town wasn't the outlaw with a wanted poster, but the woman nobody had put one on yet? Picture this. Dust so thick it chokes the daylight. A main street wide enough for a cattle drive, and barely wide enough for two people to pass without brushing shoulders. A marshal who hasn't slept a full night in 6 months. And a woman who just rode in on a horse that wasn't hers, wearing a dress she definitely didn't buy. That's where this story starts, and by the time it ends, you're going to ask yourself, who exactly was the law supposed to protect? Stay with me, because nothing about this is what it looks like. The town of Redstone Crossing sat at the edge of the New Mexico territory, like a dare nobody had accepted yet. It had exactly 1 church, 2 saloons, a telegraph office that worked when it felt like it, and a marshal by the name of Callum Reese. Callum Reese was 34 years old. He'd been a marshal for 7 of them. Before that, cavalry. Before that, a ranch kid from Texas who learned young that the world doesn't reward the ones who hesitate. He was not a cruel man. He was not a soft one either. He was the kind of man who kept his promises even when keeping them cost him something. In Redstone Crossing, that reputation was his only real currency. He had 4 deputies, a jailhouse with a leaning wall, and a town that was sitting on top of something valuable. Silver ore, freshly discovered, which meant trouble was coming whether he invited it or not. He knew it. The whole town knew it. They just didn't know which direction trouble would come from. Turns out, it came from the southwest, on a Tuesday afternoon, and it arrived in a dress. Her name, she said, was Marisol Vega. She said it the way people say things they've practiced. Smooth, just the right amount of casual. She rode into Redstone Crossing like she owned the road, which she did not, and tied her horse outside the general store like she'd been doing it for years, which she had not. The horse had a brand that didn't belong to any ranch within 300 miles. Callum noticed. He noticed everything. That was the job. He didn't approach her right away. He watched from across the street, thumb hooked in his belt, letting her move through the town at her own pace. She bought a canteen of water. She asked about room and board at the saloon. She smiled at the shopkeeper, like she was somebody's cousin come to visit for the summer. Then she turned and looked directly at Callum across the dusty street. Not startled, not guilty. She looked at him the way you look at someone you already know is watching you. Measured, level, and just a shade amused. That was the moment Callum Reese understood this was going to be a problem. Now, before we go any further, I have to ask you something. Have you ever been absolutely certain someone was trouble and completely unable to walk away from finding out why? Because that is exactly the position Callum Reese put himself in, and I have a feeling some of you know exactly what that feels like. Drop a comment below. Have you ever known something was a bad idea from the very first second? Tell me about it. I read every single one. And while you're thinking about it, let me tell you what Marisol Vega was actually doing in Redstone Crossing. 3 weeks before she rode into town, a man named Denton Cross had ridden out of it. Denton Cross was not a good man. He wasn't the worst man the territory had ever produced, but he was in the conversation. He ran a land grab operation that operated in the gray space between legal and criminal, buying up deeds from families who didn't realize what they were signing, sometimes intimidating the ones who did. With the silver discovery, those deeds had become worth a considerable amount more than they'd been worth when he bought them. Denton Cross had left Redstone Crossing carrying a saddlebag full of those deeds, documents that represented the financial futures of at least 14 families in the valley. He'd also left with something else, a promissory note for $40,000, signed by a land investment company out of Santa Fe that may or may not have actually existed. And here is the thing about Denton Cross that Callum didn't know yet. Someone had been following him for a long time. Someone who had very personal reasons to want those documents back. Marisol Vega had worked for her father's land office in Socorro since she was old enough to read a contract. She knew what a fraudulent deed looked like. She knew how the language shifted when someone was trying to obscure ownership rights. She could read a property transfer in the time it took most men to find the signature line. Her father, Rafael Vega, had been one of 14 landowners in the valley who'd signed something they hadn't fully understood. He was also, by this point in the story, no longer alive to contest it. Marisol had buried him in March. By April, she was on the road. By May, she was in Redstone Crossing with a borrowed horse and a plan that depended entirely on her not getting caught before she found what she was looking for. What she was looking for was in the jailhouse. Because in Denton Cross's absence, Callum Reese had done some digging of his own, and what he'd found had landed in an evidence lockbox bolted to the floor of the Redstone Crossing jail. The same saddlebag Denton Cross had tried to get out of town with. Cross had been picked up 2 days outside of town by a federal deputy chasing something else entirely. The bag had come back to Redstone Crossing. Callum was waiting on instructions from the territorial court on what to do with it. Marisol didn't know about the federal deputy. She didn't know about the lockbox. She thought she was walking into a town where nobody had any idea what was coming. She was wrong about that, but not wrong in the way she expected. Callum Reese gave her 1 day. He watched her ask around. He watched her case the saloon, the general store, the telegraph office. He watched her charm the deputy who was young enough to be impressed by a woman who looked at him directly when she talked. He watched her be careful without looking like she was being careful, which was itself a skill that told him something. That evening, as the sun dropped behind the mesa and turned the dust orange, he walked across the street to the saloon. She was sitting at a corner table with a glass of water, not whiskey, he noted, and a small notebook she closed the moment she saw him coming. He sat down across from her without asking. "I'd invite you to sit," she said, "but it seems like you've made up your mind already." "Marisol Vega," he said. "Marshal Reese," she said. And she said his name the way she'd looked at him across the street, like she'd had it memorized. "That horse you rode in on." "Borrowed," she said. "From?" She met his eyes. "Someone who owed my family a favor." He studied her for a moment. She studied him right back, which was, again, not the response he usually got. "What are you looking for in Redstone Crossing?" he asked. "I'm passing through." "You asked about long-term room rates." She didn't flinch. "I might stay a while." "Why?" She tilted her head slightly. "Marshal, is there a law against a woman deciding to stay in a town she finds agreeable?" "No," he said. "There's not." He stood up, adjusted his hat, and looked at her one more time. "Don't borrow anything else," he said. And he walked out. She waited until after midnight. She didn't try to break in, she was smarter than that. What she did was go to the telegraph office at a time when the overnight operator had a known habit of falling asleep. She sent a message to a land attorney in Santa Fe she'd been corresponding with for 2 months. What she got back, 20 minutes later, confirmed what she needed to know. The lockbox in the Redstone Crossing jailhouse contained the original deeds, and those deeds, under territorial law, were contestable. If she could get in front of a judge with the right documentation, her father's original purchase agreements, the correspondence from Denton Cross's representative, and the deeds themselves, she had a case. The problem was that getting in front of a judge required the marshal's cooperation, or, at minimum, his willingness to not stand in the way. And she had no idea which direction Callum Reese was going to fall on this. She went back to her room and wrote down what she knew about him. Methodical, precise. She'd done this with every obstacle she'd encountered in the last 3 months. What she wrote at the end of the page was this: "He notices everything, and he hasn't arrested me yet." That means something. Here's what it meant. Callum Reese had pulled the deed records 3 days before Marisol Vega arrived. He wasn't a land lawyer. He wasn't a judge. But he'd grown up watching families work land they couldn't afford to lose. And he knew what it looked like when paperwork had been drafted to be confusing on purpose. He'd looked at those documents for a long time. He also knew the name Vega. It was on one of the deeds, and it had a notation beside it. Deceased, estate unresolved, that had struck him wrong in a way he hadn't been able to shake. When Marisol Vega rode into his town on a borrowed horse, Callum Reese had already been losing sleep over those documents for 72 hours. He wasn't her enemy. He also wasn't sure yet if he could be what she needed. But he was paying attention. And that, in Redstone Crossing, in the summer of 1882, was more than most people got. The next 3 days moved fast. A man arrived from Santa Fe, a representative of the land investment company, the one that may or may not have existed. His name was Aldous Prentice, and he had an attorney with him, and the attorney had papers, and the papers were designed to look like the kind of papers that ended conversations. Prentice wanted the deeds. He wanted them transferred to his company's name formally before the territorial court could weigh in. He wanted it done quietly and quickly. He went to see Callum Reese first. He offered a finder's fee for cooperation. He phrased it carefully, not as a bribe, he would have said, but as a professional courtesy. Callum showed him the door with the particular brand of courtesy that requires no words and one extended arm. Prentice then went to find Marisol. This is where I need you to lean in, because this is the part of the story where the thing that looked like a love story turned into something else entirely. Something with higher stakes and a harder edge. Prentice knew who she was. He'd done his homework, or rather, someone in the Santa Fe operation had done it for him. He knew about Rafael Vega. He knew she'd been following the paper trail. He knew she was in Redstone Crossing. He came to her with an offer, a settlement, a fraction of what the land was worth, framed as generosity. He told her she couldn't win in court. He told her she was one woman against a company with resources she couldn't match. He told her she should take what was being offered and go home. He said it politely. That made it worse. She listened to all of it. She thanked him for his time. She showed him the same door Callum had shown him 20 minutes earlier. Then she went straight to the jailhouse. "I need to talk to you," she said. Callum looked up from his desk. One of his deputies was in the back. It was the middle of the afternoon, yellow light coming through the single window. "Aldous Prentice," she said. "He came to see me too," Callum said. She paused. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to leave." Something shifted in her expression. Not relief exactly, but a recalibration. Like she'd prepared for a version of this conversation that no longer applied. She sat down in the chair across from his desk. She put her hands flat on the wood. "My father's name is on one of those deeds in your lockbox," she said. "He signed a document 3 years ago that he believed was a lease renewal. It wasn't. Denton Cross's people had rewritten it as a title transfer. He didn't have the money for a lawyer to review it. Most of the families in that valley didn't." Callum didn't say anything. He let her finish. "I have his original lease agreements. I have letters from Cross's representative that contradict the transfers. I have a land attorney in Santa Fe who has reviewed everything and believes the case is strong. What I don't have is access to the original deeds, because they're in your lockbox, and I can't make the case without them." She looked at him. He looked at her. "I'm not asking you to do anything outside the law," she said. "I'm asking you to let the law do its job." Callum Reese was quiet for a long moment. Then, "The territorial judge comes through here in 11 days. "I know," she said. "If I file a formal request to hold those documents as evidence in a contested land claim, Prentice can't touch them until the judge reviews." "Can you do that?" she asked. "Already did it this morning," he said. before Prentice got off his horse. And now, if you're not already subscribed to this channel, what are you waiting for? We're just getting to the good part, and I promise you, the next section is the one where everything gets complicated in the best possible way. Hit that subscribe button right now, because the people who subscribed last week are already ahead of you, and I'd hate for you to miss what's coming. The 11 days were not quiet. Prentice hired 2 local men to follow Marisol, not to threaten her. He was too careful for that, but to know where she was and who she was talking to. Callum noticed this within 48 hours and had a direct conversation with both men that resulted in them finding other ways to spend their time. Prentice complained. Callum cited a vague but firmly stated ordinance against loitering in the service of harassment that may or may not have been real. It didn't matter. The men stopped. What Callum couldn't stop was the pressure coming from above him. The county sheriff rode out on day 6. He had a message from someone in the territorial government, someone who apparently had an interest in the land investment company, though this interest was, naturally, never stated directly. The message, translated from its polite language, was, "Let this go." Callum listened to the sheriff. He nodded in the right places. He thanked him for making the ride. Then he filed a second report, this one requesting federal oversight of the deed review process, citing the prior arrest of Denton Cross by federal deputies as establishing federal interest in the case. He sent it the same afternoon the sheriff rode out. He did not tell Marisol about the sheriff's visit. He told her about the federal filing. "Why are you doing this?" she asked him that evening outside the jailhouse. The kind of late summer dark that felt thick and close. He thought about it, genuinely. "My father lost land," he said. "Different territory, different time, same paper, same trick." He paused. He never got it back.
I do.
She looked at him for a long moment. "I'm sorry," she said.
I ain't forgotten.
"Don't be," he said. "Be ready for Thursday." Thursday was the judge.
Find him.
Honorable Cecil Marsh rode into Redstone Crossing at 10 in the morning with a court recorder, a bad back, and a reputation for impatience with cases he considered trivial. He did not consider this one trivial. The federal filing had preceded him, and he'd read everything Callum had submitted before he arrived. Prentice's attorney presented his case first. It was polished. It was well documented. It leaned heavily on the legal weight of the transfers, as signed, and the company's investment in good faith. Then, Marisol Vega presented hers. She stood in front of Judge Marsh and laid out 3 years of correspondence, original agreements, and a timeline that made the mechanism of the fraud clear without ever requiring him to assume bad faith. The documents showed it without commentary. She was precise. She was composed. She was the kind of prepared that only comes from having nothing else to lose.
Your Honor.
Callum sat in the back of the room and did not say a word. He had done his part. Judge Marsh ruled the original transfers invalid, 14 of them, covering land in the valley from the Vega parcel to a homestead 7 miles north. He ordered the deeds held by the court, pending formal re-registration to the original families or their heirs. It took him 20 minutes to decide. Prentice was out of Redstone Crossing by sundown. Marisol stayed 2 more days. She had papers to sign, correspondence to complete, arrangements to make for the re-registration process with the attorney in Santa Fe. On the second evening, she and Callum sat outside the jailhouse in the 2 chairs that had lived on that porch for probably 15 years, watching the last of the light go out over the mesa. "What happens now?" he asked. "I go home," she said. "Start putting things back together." "The land?"
The land.
"It'll take time,
Something about my father.
but it's ours again." She paused.
Would have.
"My father would have..." She stopped. "I know," Callum said. They were quiet for a while.
I know.
"You could have made this harder,"
You really
she
think
said
he was my
eventually.
father?
"Yeah," he said. "Why didn't you?" He looked at her. The mesa was dark red at the edges now, burning down to brown. "Because you were right," he said. And I knew it the minute I looked at those documents. Sometimes the job is just making sure what's right has enough room to happen. She was quiet.
That is all.
That's not how most people in your position would describe the job, she said. No, he agreed. It's not.
But it's the truth.
The light went the rest of the way out. She left the next morning, before sunrise, on a horse that actually belonged to her this time. One she'd bought from the livery with some of the money she'd put aside for this trip. Callum was up. Of course he was. He was always up before sunrise. She stopped in the street and looked at him. Marshal Reese, she said.
Mary.
Miss Vega, he said. She held his gaze for a moment. Just a moment. Then she turned the horse south and rode. Callum Reese stood in the street for a while after the dust settled. Then he went inside and made coffee, and sat down at his desk and looked at the empty lockbox, now relieved of its contents and transferred to the court, and thought about how the most important things a person can do in this life are often the ones that don't make any noise at all. He thought about his father's land, about the way paper can be made to say things that weren't agreed to. He thought about a woman who'd ridden into his town on a borrowed horse, armed with nothing but documentation and the kind of clarity that comes from having already lost the worst thing. And he thought, some stories don't end. They just reach a point where the people in them have done what they came to do. He poured his coffee. Outside, Redstone Crossing woke up the way it always did, slow and dusty and indifferent to the dramas that passed through it. But something had shifted. 14 families in the valley would have their land back. The paper that had been used against them was going to be undone. And a marshal who'd been losing sleep for 3 months could maybe finally get some rest. So here is what this story is actually about. Beneath the dust and the deed records and the 2 people sitting on a porch watching the light go out. It's about what happens when the people who are supposed to uphold the law choose to take it seriously, not as a tool of whoever is loudest, or richest, or most connected, but as a structure meant to protect the people it was designed for. Callum Reese didn't break any rules. He filed the right papers. He made the right requests. He showed up at the right moments and got out of the way at the right moments. Marisol Vega didn't need saving. She needed the machinery she was owed to actually function. That's the story. What do you think? Is that kind of integrity even possible in systems today? Have you ever encountered someone in a position of power who used it the right way when it would have been easier not to? Tell me in the comments. That conversation is worth having. The Wild West was not a simple place. It was a collision of old laws, new money, people trying to hold on to what was theirs, and people trying to take it. The stories that survive from that era tend to center on gunfights and outlaws. But the ones that shaped the actual lives of actual people, they were often quieter. They happened in jailhouses and courtrooms and telegraph offices. They happened when someone with a badge decided that their job was to let justice have room to breathe. Redstone Crossing was fictional, but the mechanism, fraudulent land transfers, vulnerable families, paper designed to confuse, that was as real as the dust. And some of those cases, 14 miles and 140 years apart, are still being untangled today. This story was created using artificial intelligence as part of an independent creative project designed to entertain and explore the human experience through fictional storytelling. The characters, locations, events, and entities depicted, including Marshal Callum Reese, Marisol Vega, Redstone Crossing, and all associated figures, are entirely fictional and products of the author's imagination. For accurate historical accounts of the American frontier, land rights in the New Mexico Territory, or related subjects, we encourage you to consult scholarly sources, historical archives, and official records. The creative reconstruction you watched was made with care, curiosity, and deep respect for the real stories that inspired it.